Austan, still major questions on the path forward for policy, competing interests within the GOP, as we know. We didn't get any clarification on that. And yet, the economy seems to be requesting an interest rate hike this month. Does it get one?
You know, I think the Fed's been itching, wanting to raise rates for some time, and so I think it's a decent chance, that the Fed moves, and for sure that the market looks at conditions and says, you know, the growth rate is kicking up a little bit, the job market. President Trump takes over. We're close to full employment already. You've already seen last year wages starting to rise. So I think there's a decent chance we get some interest rate movement.
This is all with so much murkiness in Washington, competing interests within the GOP, differing tax plans between the Paul Ryan plan, whatever Gary Cohn is coming with at the NEA. If you were advising President Trump now, and obviously you've advised presidents in the past, but if you were in Kevin Hassett's role, what would you be telling him?
Well, you know, Kevin Hassett comes from, let's call it, the Paul Ryan wing of the Republican Party. So I would imagine that Kevin is telling the president, advising and pushing for corporate tax reform has been a big focus for Hassett over the years. The issue, as you highlight, is there are a lot of big divisions when it comes down to the details, and the so-called border adjustment tax effectively gets rid of corporate income taxation and replaces it with a tax on consumers. And that's going to be very controversial, even if there are reasons why you would want to do that, to reduce the tax on production and increase it on consumers. The consumers are going to notice, and their businesses that cater to consumers, like retail and gas stations and stuff like that, they have already noticed. So I think they're going to have a hard time pushing through maybe some of the details that the President Trump kind of touched on the thematic level. I thought he did a decent job, actually, and I'm kind of surprised that this wasn't the tone of his inaugural address, that this wasn't the tone of his first month in office, because a lot of the things he said, I think the Democrats probably would agree with, or they would kind of be on board. If he wants to put a focus on, let's have fewer wars in the Middle East and let's put the focus on rebuilding America, I think there are a lot of people who would agree with that.
Austan, on that topic exactly, on rebuilding America, we've got a figure, $1 trillion, probably over 10 years. What's doable? What ultimate figure could be spent on infrastructure, and how's it going to be paid for?
Well, you know, I'm not at all convinced they're going to be able to do much on infrastructure, because you saw there was a subtle change of wording in what Donald Trump said last night about infrastructure. He had, through the campaign, been saying his plan was for $1 trillion of infrastructure. And there was a subtle change, which was now the plan is to enable $1 trillion of infrastructure, which I think means something like a tax credit. And then the scramble will be trying to get your projects, your private projects, to count as infrastructure for that purpose. So I think they've already said, the administration's already said that the funding source they want to have for their program is this one-time tax on repatriated foreign earnings. That kind of puts a that puts a firm upper bound on how much it can be, and I think that's $100 to $150 billion cost to the government. So I think the details on that one might end up being a lot smaller than maybe what the advocates hope.